If you want to take big close-ups of small subjects, then you have to find a way of making a lens focus really close. Regular camera lenses are limited by their minimum focusing distance, which is always too far away to get in really tight on the business part of a flower or the veins of a leaf. There are specialised macro lenses dedicated to close-up shooting, but they're not the only option. So we're going to look at a handy camera accessory that's more versatile than you might think. To make any lens focus closer, all you have to do is move it further away from the camera body. This allows it to take a sharp shot of your subject at a higher magnification, but you need something to hold it firmly in place and not let any light in. The solution is an extension tube, which is a simple device with the lens mount on one end and the camera mount on the other. There are no lenses inside, it's just a hollow tube that extends the distance between the camera and the lens. And the longer the extension, the closer you can focus, and the more you'll magnify your subject. The most convenient extension tubes come in sets of 3. They're all different lengths, so you can swap them around or stack them together to get different magnifications. The important thing to remember is when the amount of extension matches the focal length of the lens, you'll achieve a life-size shot or a reproduction ratio of 1:1. So 28mm of extension will give a 1:1 ratio with a 28mm lens, and 50mm of extension will give a life-size shot with a 50mm lens. So let's now take a look at how it works. With this 50mm lens, if I switch to manual focus and then turn the focusing ring to its closest setting, which in this case is 0.45 meters, then I'll get the minimum focusing distance. If I now take a shot of something at that distance, I reach the limit of what this lens can do in terms of close-up photography. So let's take a shot. So that is as close as I can get for a sharp picture. But if I now attach a 20mm extension tube, wow, we get much, much closer. If we want to get to true macro level with a life-size shot, all we have to do is match the focal length with the extension. Now I've got 12, 20 and 36mm tubes, so I can't make exactly 50mm, but I can get 48mm by stacking the 36 and the 12 together, and that's close enough. With the extension matching the focal length, I can now take shots at 1:1. This means I'm magnifying the subject to the same level that I get if I place it directly on the camera's sensor and took a picture, if I could. With this 50mm lens, we can actually take shots bigger than life size, because by stacking all 3 tubes together, we end up with 68mm of extension. Add that to a 50mm lens and we magnify the subject more than life size, because the extension is greater than the focal length. This means that my 50mm lens stacked out with extension tubes is actually giving more magnification than a dedicated macro lens. So if I want to get some really big close-ups, I've pretty much got everything I need. Although it's possible to shoot handheld with extension tubes, once you've magnified a subject to life size or bigger, you'll find that framing a shot can become quite tricky, as a small movement of the camera makes a massive difference to the composition. On top of that, accurate focusing can be a challenge too, because getting a really precise result is pretty hit and miss if you're wobbling around. For this reason, most good macro shots are taken using a tripod, as that lets you fix the camera in position and lock it firmly in place. For focusing, manual focus is the way to go, because you can tweak the focusing ring to get the sharp spot exactly where you want it. You can get extension tubes with all the electronic contacts inside them to support autofocus systems, but because of the precision needed in macro shooting, you'll get better results with manual focus. If you're taking macro shots indoors on a table or worktop, moving the camera itself can be a really slow and frustrating way to adjust composition and focus. A top tip is to put your subject on a sheet of paper. By doing this, you can make really fine adjustments to framing and focus simply by sliding the base paper to and fro. It makes fine-tuning a shot dead simple, which is kind of what all photographers want. Although they're really versatile, as they'll make any lens focus closer, the downside of extension tubes is that you'll no longer be able to focus on infinity when they're fitted. Try and focus on a more distant subject and you'll be met with a sea of blur. Because the lens has been forced to focus closer, it can no longer perform at greater distances. So if you want to shoot normally, you'll have to remove your tubes and refit the lens first. This can be a bit of a faff if you're swapping regularly between close-up and distant shots, but you know, you can't have everything. A set of extension tubes is a great way to start exploring close-up and macro photography. They're much cheaper than a dedicated macro lens, and even if you get into close-ups in a big way and invest in a macro lens, you can still use them as they'll fit straight on just like with any other lens. In short, if you want a gadget that will change the way your lenses behave and open up different ways of seeing the world, then a set of tubes is definitely a worthwhile addition to your camera bag.